You're listening to the JJS podcast. Up to this point, the most successful companies around the world have had entire departments made up of full-time employees dedicated to providing marketing communication support, leaving every other company without those resources at a distinct disadvantage. Well, the world has changed, and we have to change with it. That's why I'm going to take my 15 years of experience of managing marketing communication strategies for some of the biggest brands in the world and share that knowledge with you so that it can improve your business and your life. So if you're a business professional or an entrepreneur who wants to learn how to deploy the right strategies given your position and the position of the audience you're trying to reach, you're in the right place. Hey guys, welcome to the JJS podcast. So I just wanted to follow up on my last episode about the Elon Musk and Twitter situation. As we all know, this story has developed significantly, culminating with Elon Musk and Twitter reaching a deal for Elon to own Twitter. Now, there's still some speculation in the ether a little bit about whether or not this deal will actually go through due to a number of different nuance, caveats, and whatnot. So who knows where this story will be by the time this is uploaded, but as of right now, it looks like Elon Musk is gonna own Twitter. And so I just wanted to build on the last episode and kind of talk about how I feel this is all tied back to the power of communications and why I talk about all this communication stuff all the time. And even though a lot of people may not fully understand its impact or how significant it is, but I feel this is all kind of related to that, and I'll explain how. And not just with this story, but kind of multiple major headline stories that are happening right now. So, as we know, Elon Musk took over Twitter, and half of the population is really happy about it, half the population is really upset about it for various reasons. And I think it all stems from this collective failure and inability on all our part to communicate at a fundamental level with each other, especially when we disagree. We've kind of lost this very basic ability to communicate with folks we disagree with and have a civil discourse and come away with fresh insights or at least a more nuanced kind of worldview or perspective. And so what's been happening is over time we've been self-selecting these little echo chambers that we join or that we only are exposed to, that is filled with voices and mindsets that are very similar to our own. And so our tolerance for divergent opinions or viewpoints has been diminished greatly. And so as that's become more normalized, and it's digitally enabled, mind you, and I think a lot of it has to do with the digital technology enabling us to do that, over time what's been happening is, folks who wind up working at Twitter or folks who wind up working at CNN Plus or Netflix or Disney wind up becoming hyper-ideologues. They wind up being very, very ideological in their perspective and only kind of being limited to one corridor of the ideological spectrum without even realizing it. I mean, that's kind of that's really the ironic part, is a lot of people on both sides don't even realize that they're extremely ideological. In their mind, they think, well, it's not that I'm an ideologue, that this is the way it is. This is the reality of, this is the truth of things. This is progress or what have you. And anyone who disagrees it doesn't get it. And what they fail to realize is that it's all ideological. Like, it all boils down to ideology. So as they proceed to develop platforms or applications or moderate content or create content or whatnot, it's all being done through this hyper ideological lens. And as a result, it causes a reaction or resistance, if not outright rejection, by the market, right? That's why you lose hundreds of thousands of subscribers and possibly millions more if you're Netflix. That's why you invite takeovers by multi-billionaires who for better or for worse, are getting frustrated with your constant suppression of certain voices. That's why your news application fails almost instantaneously if you're CNN, because, again, the market itself is ideologically diverse, if not as a whole ideologically agnostic. And so it rejects hyper ideological platforms or applications or anything like that organically. And so I think that's what we're seeing happen. We're seeing that play out very publicly and very visibly. And it all ties back, the root cause, it all ties back to a breakdown or failure to communicate effectively with each other. Because that's a fundamental ability, and it also kind of creates more nuance, more texture to your perspective. So it may not necessarily change your opinions or your viewpoints on things, but at least allows you to understand where other people are coming from. The more civil discourse you have with folks who think differently from you. And so people aren't doing that anymore. And so these are the very public results. I mean, it's like it's having an impact across various areas of our lives. These are just the most visible examples of it happening. And so, this would happen when I was working in marketing communications for these monolithic, huge corporate entities. Is there'd be some piece of information or something that simply existed. It just was the truth, and management or executives would not want us to share that piece of information. They would want to suppress that kind of information, or because they were concerned about how the employees would react, or how the market would react, or whatnot, or they just didn't agree with it in some way, and so they would want to withhold that piece of information or spin it in some other way, and that never worked out. That always worked out badly. So I saw this play out in a microcosm, so to speak, because the people in the organization would draw their own conclusions, or they would have their own theories about things and all this, and that would just create more and more toxicity within the environment, when the smarter idea would have been to just tell them what was going on and just be forthright about what's happening, and try to frame it in as honest and candid way as you possibly can, understanding that not sometimes things aren't always the way you want them to be, right? And so I saw this play out, and it always led to more problems. It always led to disaster. And so that's kind of what I feel is happening now with this situation between Elon Musk and Twitter, and the CNN Plus and Netflix and Disney. It's all happening because we are not willing or able to communicate and come to a consensus and meet, have a common ground. We're losing that very fundamental ability. And so that always is going to end up bad for you, wherever you sit. Ideologically, this is not limited to one side or another. If you cannot effectively communicate or listen to people who have different perspectives or different information, you're always going to be at a significant disadvantage. And eventually, whether it's the market or it's other people in your life or anything, you're going to be resisted and you're going to be rejected eventually, because the general population is diverse, and it's as a collective not of one ideological persuasion or another. It's ideologically agnostic. So I just wanted to build on the point I was making with the last episode, and kind of just re-emphasize the importance. And that's why I'm always talking about, I hate sounding like a broken record, but that's why I'm always talking about the importance of thinking about hiring a marketing communications agency as opposed to hiring a marketing person or whatnot. It's because, had Twitter hired a marketing communications agency that, because they were, consultant and not an employee, they could be frank and honest with them. They would have told them, A, B, and C is likely to happen because your employees or whatnot are all of one ideological persuasion, And eventually you're going to be met with some kind of a reaction from the market because the market is not of that ideological persuasion, right? You can't be that honest and forthright with the leadership at Twitter if you work at Twitter, right? And so, that applies to every kind of business you can think of. I mean, it's one thing to hire a marketing communications employee or a person who's limited in what they can actually do because they're limited by the dynamic, the relationship with you as an employer. It is wiser to bring on a marketing communications agency that can do more than one person and be honest with you about the actions you should take or the approaches you should take when it comes to communicating to your internal stakeholders or your external stakeholders. That agency, if they're responsible, will be honest with you about what you should do or what you could do or what you shouldn't do. And that piece, that element is missing for a lot of business owners and a lot of directors at some of these companies and whatnot. Things are happening and they're not understanding why they're happening. It's because the people who are in a position to understand what was going to happen or was happening weren't in a position to tell you because they worked for you and they feared reprisals. So that's why I constantly say it's wiser to bring in a marketing communications consultant because the marketing communications element of your business is the most visible and it's very important and it can actually impact, as we've seen, it can impact the very existence and operation of your company, whether you're Twitter or CNN or Disney or Netflix or any other companies that are feeling the whiplash, so to speak, from only doing things from one perspective. And not being objective or centrist or apolitical, which would be the ideal, for a company. It'll behoove you to consider that as an option because you're going to get way more bang for your buck if you go that route. So I just want to jump on here and share that with you guys. If you have any feedback or comments about this or anything else, feel free to let me know. And as always, good luck out there. Hey, I want to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to review and rate it so that other people who are interested in these topics can easily find it. Be sure to share it and tune in every Wednesday for a new episode of the JJS podcast. Thanks again for listening, and remember, communication without strategy is just noise. Until next time.